Hi, welcome to session 4. Like all of these videos, I cover the topic outcomes, the biblical perspective, what we're going to read and watch, view, and of course the assignments and hopefully some tips and tricks as we go along. So in this week, as we go forward from peer editing, we've had that process now. We opened ourselves up, became vulnerable, and shared our work with our peers. It's hard enough, right, to share it with our instructors. I am so grateful for every single work you share with me because I do know that that's a big ask on our side. Even though you signed up for creative writing, it's still a big thing to open ourselves up and be vulnerable. And now we're saying, hey, do that with your peers. And now we're not stopping there either. We're saying, okay, we did that. We opened ourselves up. Well, let's talk about it. What did they say? What are they doing with that? I really want you to realize that absolutely every single person is going to quite possibly have very different outlooks on what they want you to do. In a sense, copy editing should be pretty much the same, right? Because we're just looking at how we're putting together sentences or we're looking at commas. But even then, there are different ways to solve issues, and so different people may either suggest that solution or they may open the door for those solutions. I try very hard to open that door because I want you to know, like, well, what's wrong with that sentence, and then therefore what kind of things could make it stronger. And then I want you to pick because I want you to know what the issue is. I want you to know how to watch for it, and I want you to make the choice that's best for you because those solutions are different as you go forward and look at different things that you're writing. But we all have sort of things that we catch and things that we don't. Yes, I'm good at editing, but I'm also not a professional editor. And even there, people are going to miss things. Some people are brilliant at it, so grab them when you find them. Those who catch just about everything. But what I want you to think about is that that person is doing their best to say, okay, so what could make this stronger? What could make this clearer? What could make this absolutely the best that it could be? They are never looking at it and thinking, oh, well, this person's terrible. Like, oh, I can't stand, why are they writing? Like, that's not generally what we're doing, is it? You're not doing that. We're not doing that to each other. But we're looking at it, we're thinking, well, what could I offer? What do I know about what I've read, what I've experienced? As you can see in feedback that I give, I often make comments about different writers and different approaches and different interviews that people have given about how they tackle particular things, like the discussions about George Saunders, specifically his story Puppy, but when he talks with interviewers about, how does he create these really distinct voices where we have two very different people. That's why we use the story Puppy for that, because the two characters in that are far, far different from each other. So how does he do that? How does he write half a story from person A and then half a story from person B? What does that look like? What kind of tips could he give us? Well, when we're seeing those kinds of things, we're looking at one specific aspect that someone could give us and share with us. And we want to explore that. We want to see where it goes. But we also want to say, okay, I'm going to take what I can from that. I'm going to take what I can to grow and learn. There may be nothing that day that like sort of impacts you or is insightful, and then another day there may be 10 different things. But consider the fact that everyone's just trying to share ideas. We're trying to push forward, and we're going to think of different examples, different connections. And it is not your responsibility to respond to every single one. It's not your responsibility to incorporate every single one. The thing on your side is that you too are saying, what can I do to make this the strongest, clearest, best product that I can produce? And sometimes that means taking different directions because different people are giving you feedback that you want to use. And sometimes it's standing strong and saying, I'm sorry, I will not go that direction. But a big part of that is just the conversation you have. The fact that you're talking about, like, okay, well, why do I want to go that way? Why do I not want to go that way? These are the conversations we need to have. So this session, we are taking those peer edits the same way our peers are practicing as our editors. In the future, hopefully we are having our editors. And then we're saying, okay, I'm not done, right? What could I put into my writing from here? What is helpful? What is useful? What would that look like? So this is a great phrase to consider. In this session, you will take back authorial control and decisions for the final version of your story. So using things like Jenkins's self-editing checklist, we've had some great conversations already in a couple of different threads about, maybe that's a lot of things. Maybe your work sort of devolves if you use all the things in a checklist. Again, look for what speaks to you, what really helps you grow. Make your own checklist. I always keep an APA quick guide of the things I just constantly forget. It's just the nature of life, right? So I always tell students in my writing classes, like, hey, let's make you one. Maybe my study guide, my quick guide is useful. Maybe it's not. Maybe there are other things you would rather have on this sheet. And we don't want to overload. It's not the entire APA book, right? It's just a couple of things that are really useful to us. And that's what we should be doing with editing as well. So we're going to talk about that experience in our discussion board, that difference between what I do when I edit and what someone else does to my work when they are editing. And then we're going to apply this. We're going to say, what can I take from all of this? As you can tell already, I've been a little standoffish and like really editing your work. I'm reviewing and trying to sort of make sure everyone's on track, because in the end, yes, I do want to give you an edit, but I want you to have a lot of space right now to explore what you want to do and what others are doing with your work. And then I want to have that final conversation and support you there. But if at any point you are like, hey, I really do want you to do a copy edit or a substantive edit, just holler, make me do it. I'm fine doing that. I just am trying to give everyone some space as we go into sessions 4 and 5. I will start doing more of that myself, but I wanted you to not take those edits. For instance, taking them from sessions 1 and 2 and then putting them into that work and altering it all before your peers get a hold of it. I see myself as the last one in this write-up. So I like to put these in here as well, since they're already in our curriculum, but I want to think about them. I want to see how these ideas can impact and support us as we go forward. So here our biblical perspective is from Psalms 119. Your statutes are my delight. They are my counselors. And again, those kinds of word counselors, that's not the people who make the law and tell you what you have to do. They're saying, hey, we are your wise supports. So as you learn how to incorporate all these edits, it's good to know the rules. It's good to meet those criteria points, sort of those checkpoints for editing and for having a strong work. But all of this skillful knowledge is going to put you ahead of lots of people who haven't really started that or haven't really approached it. And it truly is important. So how can you take delight in that, in God's presence in your writing, in this opportunity He's given you to have people edit your work? It's difficult to be that vulnerable, but at the same time, it's an amazing opportunity to make those connections and grow. I'm reminded right there of a friend who was doing self-publishing, and there was a group she got into where they were editing for each other. And there was one particular person who edited a lot for her. And after a while, I was a bit concerned about that, because when we get sort of too enveloped in that relationship, or when we are focused on what one person is saying, we may start to give them a little more credence than they should have. And I don't think in the end that it was bad. I just want people to think about things like that. Like, if we have that editor, are we doing a really good job of butting heads and saying, oh, I want this, I want that? Like, why are we doing this? Are we asking all those questions? Or are we just going, okay, well, you want that, I'm going to do it? Like, keep asking those questions, keep pushing it forward. So our reading this week is actually a little bit less. I know, you didn't think you were going to get one, did you? So chapter 15 in Einstein and Schwartz, and chapters 24, 25, and 26 in Stein. These are so fun to read. Okay, now viewing assignments. I wanted to comment on one of the video titles. We have our usual, the rewriting and stuff for 23, 24, and 25. And then we have a thick-skinned manuscript critique clinic. And I just wanted to encourage you there, because he's having a conversation with people who have experienced that critique, that cut. And it's not going to be different for any of us. We're all going to have those experiences. It doesn't make us wrong. It doesn't make our work any less good and wonderful. It doesn't mean your work shouldn't be out there. It's about so many things that are completely outside your control. You submit a work, but so do how many other people. Maybe that particular editor or that book agent is looking for a particular thing at that time, and that simply isn't you. That's okay. It doesn't mean that you have done something badly. It's about finding that perfect collaboration. So as you go forward, there are absolutely going to be disappointments, and it's totally okay to feel those feelings, to have those moments of pity parties, of sadness, of disappointment, but it is not a place to stop. Give yourself some time, give yourself some space to feel those things and experience those feelings, but also remind yourself that you are going to go forward. You are not here putting in all this work and growing so much for absolutely no reason. You have a reason, you have a point, and it is to jump back in when you're ready. And it's hard. So, again, not just to feel those feelings, but maybe have a person you can say, hey, I need to have like 2 weeks of calling you to cry about it or whine about it or complain about it or be angry about it. Like, feel all those feelings, have that safe person to chat with, but do not give up. Jump back in. So what are we doing? We're just doing those 2 assignments. That first one is our discussion. The second is our revisions. And remember, you can always chat with me before you do an assignment. Anytime you are like, I don't know what we're doing, or I'm not comfortable, or you have questions, send it over to me. I often get that for like research papers from students, especially my high schoolers, where they'll say, okay, so there are like the rules and then there's what I did. And so could you just like read it first and make sure I'm on track? And I love that because it makes sure that, yes, I catch something that could be terribly wrong and not fit the rubric or requirements, and I don't want them to get a bad grade. But also, I often find that you are doing wonderful, and you can get that encouragement instead. Okay, so our discussion. We are looking at those peer edits and self-edits and talking about it. Now that we've seen it, let's discuss. So 1, what's the biggest takeaway that you learned from the editing trade last session? Was your work more in need of copy edits, so like those technical things, or substantive edits? What kind of questions do people have? What do you see? And then how will peer edits influence your own self-edits this time around? One thing I often do when I edit is that I don't mark everything. What I will do if someone has a tendency towards something, so let's say their citations are bad, let's just go there. I will correct the first 2, and then I will say, what do you see? What are you looking at? Go look at those other citations. Go see what you can see. And I want them to try. I want them to contact me, send me that email and say, well, you did those first 2 and I think this should look like that. And then they send me that copy and then we talk it out. Maybe those kinds of things are helpful for you. Maybe they're not. Maybe you want a person to edit every single thing. These are great conversation things to have. So explore and see what you think. And then you're going to turn this in. So this is all in this idea that we're preparing our work. We want to be published. Maybe we don't want this particular assignment. Some of you are doing works that you've been working on. Awesome. And some of you are like, okay, fine. Like the assignment was to do like 5 pages. I wrote something fast. Either direction, you are practicing these things. You're working on these ideas. And I've enjoyed every single adventure that I've been on this week. There's so many different ones and it's been super exciting. So you get to decide. Will you accept or will you reject what someone has said about your work? Will you take that edit? Will you go forward with it? Or will you say, no, I don't want that? It's a good time as well to remember to keep duplicate copies of everything you have because you don't want to replace your original work with all those edits if maybe you don't want to keep them all. So make sure you have different files with different file names because I have done that in the past. So we did that peer submission. We got to look at their own works, and now we're going to start doing it ourselves, and we're going to see how all these connections go. So you're going to take a new Word document, open your peer edited story with all those edits, and then see what you think. You're going to accept them all and sort of like move forward from there, and then you're going to track changes for me in terms of like your response to all of those. So it's starting to sound like super layered. So I don't know exactly what that looks like in terms of catching all of it. I know that in places like Google Docs, it shows different editors, and that can be really helpful. And then it can say, Claire did that edit, and then John said he's not taking it. And so all the comments go together, and that can help. But whatever whatever program we're using, we're mainly looking at what are you going to keep? What are you going to say no to? Like, how are you going to interact with that? So track those changes to make the technical and substantive edits, and then add another 2 pages of writing to the work according to the notes you accepted and according to the intentions you had for that original work. This is a really, really cool point to think about because when we get sort of in that space of being edited, it can be a little bit overwhelming in terms of like, how are people pushing me and pulling me, and it feels like kind of like being in a tornado at times. And so what we want to do after we've looked at all that is we want to say, I'm going forward. I'm not putting this away. That's very tempting when we get some edits that are pretty upsetting or surprising or really throw us off of our game, which can happen, absolutely. Again, we're looking for partnerships where we dance well together. If someone is doing the rumba and we're doing the waltz, it's gonna be a little wild and crazy. And so sometimes that creates a lot of emotion and interaction there, which absolutely, again, feel the feels, but we've got to move forward. And so we're going to take whatever it is, and we're going to say, okay, what do I want? What do I not want? But now I am thinking about what they said, all these different parts. I'm going forward with my story. And that's what those 2 pages are really about. It's about saying, okay, I took all of those edits and then I kept going. I didn't walk away from it. A lot of times I'm tempted to give, a week or a year or 5 years to something that's been sort of horrifically edited, and it feels like an attack and all this kind of stuff. And we've got to stop that. We've got to nip that and be like, nope, I'm not reacting that way. So go slow, go careful. Don't hesitate to reach out and have conversations with me, because sometimes it's going to feel rough. And sometimes it's going to feel great. So whichever direction it is, don't hesitate to have those conversations and explore and see what it is. So you're going to keep going with those edits and see what you're going to share with me. And again, I can't wait to see where everyone's stories goes. I have loved reading them. I'm so thankful each week that I get to be that person. It's very exciting. So I will see you out there in the course shell, and I will expect you to blow up my inbox or send me stuff on the Student Lounge whenever you want to talk about a topic.